Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be a book haul, and these are books that I've acquired in, I think, October and November. So a lot of these, there was like, you know, with October there was like Prime Day or whatever, and like I mostly didn't get stuff from Amazon. There was like a Target buy two get one free deal that I did instead because they just had like a much better selection than Amazon did. Though I will say there were some books that I did acquire from Amazon because I had like really great coupons or like flash deals or whatever. And then, you know, with some of these are like Black Fridays type sales earlier in this month. I've like loosely organized it by genre. So I think we'll start with fantasy, then get into like sci-fi, mysteries, horror, romance, and then like other. So first, I think I'm going to start with books that I won from giveaways or got for free. The first two books I'll talk about I got from Penguin's Rewards program, and this is like, you know, if you buy Penguin books, then you can like ultimately redeem points for free books. So I picked up House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess. So this is like kind of pitched as a YA Game of Thrones. I don't know how accurate that is, but basically we've got the Emperor who is dead, and these 5 houses must attend the calling where one of their own will be selected to fight for the throne. The oldest child of each house is always called, but this year is different. So we've got 5 outcasts who are pitted against each other. We have the liar, the soldier, the servant, the thief, and the murderer. So that sounds exciting, and you know, you can't really go wrong with dragons, so I'm excited for this. I've heard kind of more mixed things about it, but it was still something I wanted to check out for myself, and again, it was free, so like, really pretty low stakes if I don't like it. The other book that I got for free from that program is Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. So I had tried, like I had borrowed the audiobook from the library of this and like never listened to it, and it was one of those things. This actually comes up with another book that I'll talk about in a bit. I just don't listen to audiobooks all that much, and like the only time I was listening to audiobooks was going to campus for a weekly meeting, and now that I'm not doing that, like I just don't listen to audiobooks. So I was like, you know, I think I can definitely get through a physical book much faster than an audiobook, so I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and pick this up. But basically I had talked to Amber from Books of Amber about this, and she had recommended this because I don't remember exactly why, but it's like a YA desert fantasy, and I do enjoy a good desert fantasy, so this seems like a lot of fun. But basically, our main character has never been an outlaw, a thief, or a spy, but that changes when she meets this charismatic outsider and the perfect escape route from her backcountry town. One of the quotes on the back from the New York Times Book Review: "It evokes such disparate influences, 1001 Arabian Nights, Hindu lore, and Navajo myth, as well as..." I feel like I had seen that this was kind of like, I could be confusing this with another book, but I feel like there was some sort of like Western type thing where like in gunslinging or something. I don't know. I could be confusing that with something else. But again, I do love a good desert fantasy, and this is something that I've been wanting to check out for a while. So I decided to, you know, get a free copy of this with this rewards program. So now we get into a few of the giveaways I won, and it's not nearly as much as last time. I don't know, for some reason my luck has kind of decreased a little bit, but I still have 3 to talk about. And the first one I'll talk about is Hench by Natalie, Zina, Walschots. This is kind of like superhero type story, but our main character is like, you know, she does boring things for terrible people. Even criminals need office help, and she needs a job. So it's like working for a monster lurking beneath the surface of the world isn't glamorous, but is it really worse than working for an oil conglomerate or an insurance company in this economy? So she finally gets this promising assignment and encounters a superhero, but she ends up being badly injured, but like, you know, she actually survived compared to a lot of people who did not, and then she gets laid off. So basically she's annoyed and not pleased about her treatment by the hands of a superhero. And she goes online and is like researching this and putting data up online about, you know, this, how superheroes are not great, and gets the attention of a villain, and I think this villain recruits her, and she may just save the world. So I don't know, this sounds like so much fun. Like, I love superheroes, and I think what really drew me to this particular book is this whole, like, you know, data and analyzing stuff, because obviously, like, as a biostatistician, that's what I do. So I just think that that's a really fun premise, and I'm definitely excited to see how this goes. The next book I'll talk about that I wanted to give away is Clown in a Cornfield by Cesare. So this is a horror book, a YA horror book, and basically we have our main character and her father move to a tiny town with a weird clown for a mascot. And I guess, like, the town's only factory shut down, and most of the town think that kids are to blame, because I guess these juniors and seniors at this high school are the ones who threw the party where some girl died, and they set the abandoned factory on fire, and they're posting pranks on YouTube. The kids think it's the other way around, and this town is caught between a battle between old and new, tradition and progress. But then it's like a fight that'll destroy the town until one homicidal clown with a pork pie hat and a red nose decides to end it for good. So, yeah, that sounds fun. I've definitely heard mixed things about this, but I know Lena from Sufficiently Advanced Lena just read it and really loved it, so... And again, I wanted it in a giveaway, so, low stakes if I don't like it, but I'm excited to try it. And the final book that I wanted to give away is The Living Dead by George A. Romero and Daniel Kraus. So this was actually a really fun giveaway from Tor, and it came with a bag of coffee and also a poster. So that was like such a fun giveaway. But this is, a zombie book. So we have, in California, medical examiners discover a dead man who won't stay dead, and naturally this spreads. We've got people in a Midwestern trailer park battling newly risen friends and family. We've got a U.S. aircraft carrier where living sailors hide from dead ones, where there's also a fanatic preaching the gospel of a new religion of death. I think this guy wrote the novelization of, The Shape of Water, if I'm remembering that right. So now I think we'll jump into the fantasy books that I have purchased for myself. And the first book I will talk about here is Dragon Keeper by Robin Hobb. So this is the first book in the Rainwild Chronicles, and this is part of the Realm of the Elderling series, which is this epic high fantasy series, and there's 5, I think, series of trilogies, or this one has 4 books. We're dealing with this Rainwild setting, and we have a dragon. This dragon has helped the people of the Trader cities fight off an invasion from their enemies, but the traders have forgotten their promises. They're tired of tending earthbound dragons who are hatched, weak, and deformed, but if neglected, the creatures will rampage or die, so they have to go upriver to this mythical homeland that is locked within the dragon's ancestral memories. I really enjoy Robin Hobb's books. I've heard that the Rainwild series isn't as strong as the others, but it's still something I want to read on my journey through the realm of the Elderlings. Next book I'll talk about is Kingdom of Sea and Stone, which is the sequel to Crown of Coral and Pearl by Mara Rutherford. So this is a fantasy book where, in the first book, we're following a pair of twin sisters, and one of them gets horribly injured, so the other one goes in her place to marry the prince. Here, our sister, who has been forced to marry this prince who turns out to be not so great, she just wants to go home. Some court politics take a deadly turn, and so her wish comes true, but not in the way she hoped. There's a war coming, and so she is trying to rescue their childhood best friend with her twin sister and seek new allies to fight alongside their small army. Then we've got an old enemy resurfacing. So basically, I remember really enjoying the bond between the sisters in the first book, and there was kind of this sea kingdom type aspect to it where they're from, and I don't know, it was just really great, and so I want to see how this continues. The next book I'll talk about is Thorn by Intisar Khanani, and this is a retelling of the Goose Girl. So basically our princess has, been facing her cruel family and contempt at court. She's betrothed to a prince, and so she's journeying to his land, but a mysterious and terrifying sorceress robs her of her identity and her role as princess, so she starts her life as a goose girl. But she learns more about this new kingdom and the pain and suffering its people endure, and this danger facing the country from the sorceress, and so, she's caught between worlds and has to decide who she is and what she stands for. So I've been wanting to get this for a while now, and I finally picked it up as one of the buy two, get one free sale, because this is such a gorgeous cover, and I was I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this. I do love a good retelling, and, the Goose Girl is maybe not my favorite story, but it's still really interesting. The next book I'll talk about is The Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. So this is kind of a dark academia type vibe, where our main character is kind of trying to survive the Sholomance, which is, I think, this magic school. She's probably the most dangerous thing in the place, because she's an unwilling dark sorceress or something like that, or at least, that's what the world is expecting. So I guess this boy has saved her life multiple times, but she is not a fan of him. And basically it's most of the other students would be delighted if this guy killed her, one more evil thing that's crawled out of the drains. The school is definitely putting a lot of pressure on her to become an evil witch, but she's I'm not going to do this. I've enjoyed Naomi Novik's writing, and, I do love a good dark academia type vibe. I've heard mixed things about this, and there's kind of some controversial elements, which I think she's kind of tried to address. I don't want to get into it too much, but I think some of it varies person to person. Like, I saw an entire thread of someone going through some arguments that somebody else presented and was like, yeah, no, I don't think that this is offensive. So we shall see. The next book I'll talk about is The Dance with Fate by Juliet Marillier. So this is the second book in the Warrior Bards novel, or the Warrior Bards series. So I read the first one a couple months ago, I think. So here we follow Luvon, who is, obviously one of the main characters from the first book, and she goes back to Swan Island to continue to train as an elite fighter, and she's also like a bard. She accidentally injures her friend in their final display bout, and she's blamed by his family for the accident. So she's going to his home as a bondservant from the span of a year. So once she gets there, she learns that this place is like full of dark secrets. The crow folk, who were kind of like a threat in the first one, are still threatening both worlds. And basically, the friend that she injured is battling the demon of despair, and he's not super easy to help. They start to expose the rot at the center of this place and put themselves in deadly danger. I really like Juliet Marillier's writing. It's beautiful and sort of like lyrical. For historical fantasy, she's definitely one of my go-to authors, and like, I did enjoy the first one. I feel like it took me a little bit to get into it, but it's still something I really want to continue, so I shall do so. And the next fantasy book I'll talk about is A Course of Fire by Brian D. Anderson. So this is the second book. Ew, there's like a sticker on the back. Oh, that is disappointing. I did not notice that. Oh dear. So this is the second book in this series, which I am blanking on the name. The Sorcerer's Song. There we go. That's helpful. So this kind of had a more classic fantasy feel, but some like interesting takes on it, I think. So basically, one of our main characters, Maria, is trying to attain the magic she and her allies need at this war with this like evil entity looms, but power is not easily acquired, and achieving what like the old magic users of old will come with a high price. And then we also have Lim, who is our other character, and basically he's kind of become a bit of an assassin, and he's killing in the name of a man he doesn't trust and for a faith he doesn't believe in, and basically he's trying to free Maria from her captors, thinking that she is kept there against her will. So I really liked the first one, and I definitely want to continue. Then we get into a handful that I think are more like urban fantasy, paranormal romance. So the first one I'll talk about is Blazewrath Games by Amparo Ortiz. So this is basically like a dragon Olympics type thing. So we have this Blazewrath World Cup, which is a tournament where dragons and their riders fight for glory in a dangerous relay. So our main character wants to represent Puerto Rico in their first ever World Cup appearance. Puerto Rico's runner, which is the only player without a dragon, is kicked off the team, so she's given the chance. So then she discovers that a former Blazewrath superstar has teamed up with a legendary dragon who's cursed into taking human form, and the safety of the cup is jeopardized. So this pair has been hunting down dragon sanctuaries and burning them down. So our main character is going to have to navigate some sort of international conspiracy. So, like, this sounds like such a fun premise. I really love the Olympics. Granted, this is like World Cup, but it's still some sort of like sports competition. Again, dragons, that's awesome. The next book I'll talk about is Mind to Possess by Nalini Singh. So this is the fifth, I think, book in the Psy-Changeling series. It could be the fourth, I'm not sure. This one we follow a leopard changeling, and he comes from the slums with his human mother, never knowing his changeling father. So basically he grew up without the bonds of the pack and has tried to stifle his animal nature, but this didn't go so well, so he actually killed a man and lost his best friend in the aftermath. But I guess this best friend actually survived, but she is being stalked by some sort of new nightmare, and the street children she's trying to protect are disappearing and have been turning up dead. They're trying to race to save the innocent and must face the violent truths of their past or lose everything that ever mattered. So I think this is a really fun paranormal romance series. We've got like changelings and these Psy who have like psychic powers. So it's something, I just really want to continue on with the series. The next book I'll talk about is Twice Bitten by Chloe Neill. So this is, again, some entry in this Chicagoland vampire series. I think this is the third or fourth one. Shifters from all around the country are convening in Chicago, and this master vampire has offered their leader a very special bodyguard, our main character. So she is supposed to protect the alpha and spy for the vampires while she's at it. She knows she's going to have to, agree to this. Someone is trying to kill this alpha, and so she ends up in the line of fire. So she's trying to track down this assassin, but there's a whole lot of tensions between supernaturals. So yeah, it's, again, a really fun urban fantasy series that I've been enjoying and slowly making my way through, so I definitely want to keep going with it. Some of it, I think, is maybe, like, a little bit dated, but it's still a really fun time, and, you know, the first one, Merritt, started off as a graduate student, so I thought that was, like, a really fun connection. The next book I'll talk about is The Rithmatist by Brandon Sanderson. So this is, like, one of the only ones that I haven't read, but this seems to be an urban fantasy book where Rithmatists have the power to infuse life into two-dimensional figures known as chalklings, and they're the only defense for humanity against wild chalklings, which are merciless creatures that leave mangled corpses in their wake. He's, I guess, the son of a chalkmaker at this magical academy, and he can only watch as students learn the magical art that he would give anything to practice. However, students are being kidnapped, and our main character is trying to help the professor investigating the crimes, and they're just, like, on a trail of some sort of unexpected discovery. So, again, you know, like, I really love Brandon Sanderson's books, and this has been something I've been wanting to check out for a while. I'm very curious to see how this, like, whole chalk situation works. So now we'll get into a few of the sci-fi books that I picked up, and the first one is How the Multiverse Got Its Revenge by Kay Easton. So this is obviously book 2 in the Thorn Chronicles, and this was kind of like, the first one was sort of like a sci-fi fairy tale type thing where our main character has these fairy blessings. She ends up being, like, in an arranged marriage, and there's, like, a conspiracy situation happening. So here, Rory, our main character, has actually renounced her title and is now working as a privateer on the edge of human space. However, she and her friends encounter an abandoned ship registered under a false name that seems to have fallen victim to an attack, and they find evidence of a vicious technology and arithmancy that's very alien and far beyond all known capabilities. But I guess in the cargo hold, there's some sort of rose plant that's sentient and has been designed as a massive biological weapon. And so we've got our characters trying to save the universe, or the multiverse, really. I liked the first one a lot, and I really want to see how this continues. I like how this arithmancy is kind of like magic math, and so that's a really cool aspect to me. I like how it involves these fairy tales, and I like, in this particular one, how there's, like, this sentient rose plant. I definitely want to see how that goes. The next book I'll talk about is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. So this is the other one that I was talking about, where I, like, had borrowed the audiobook from the library and then never listened to it, so I think it's just, like Angela from Literature Science Alliance was telling me that it's a really great audiobook, but it's one of those things where I was like, I know I can read the physical one much faster. So this seems kind of funny, actually. So we have our main character, April May, who happens to stumble across this giant sculpture, which is a 10-foot tall, like, transformer thing, wearing a suit of samurai armor. So they make a video and upload it to YouTube, and so this video goes viral, and there's, you know, news spreads that there's these Carls in dozens of cities around the world, and she, you know, as, like, the first one to upload this video, she's at the center of an intense media spotlight. So I guess she's dealing with the consequences her new brand of fame has on her relationship, safety, and identity, and they're trying to figure out what these Carls are and what they want. So I feel like I've seen a lot of people reading and talking about this recently, so, you know, I definitely want to check it out for myself. And, like, I had been debating on whether or not I would like it, and I, like, just read, or I looked at a sample on Amazon, and, like, I think I read, like, the first line or something, and I was like, okay, this seems like the type of humor that I'm really going to like, so I definitely want to check it out. The next book I'll talk about is Girls with Razor Hearts by Suzanne Young. So this is the second sequel to Girls with Sharp Sticks, which I read last year, I think, and really enjoyed. It was kind of like, these girls are at this, like, academy type setting where they're, like, taught to be, like, the perfect wife or whatever. Our characters have been traumatized by some things at this school, and they're finding out that the outside world is just as unwelcoming and cruel. So the girls only have each other and this, like, and their revenge-fueled desire to shut down a corporation. I'm trying to be vague, but they end up enrolling in a private school to identify the son of an investor and take down the corporation. Things are maybe not what they seem at this place, and there's some new characters perhaps with extreme ideas, and so, you know, it's like they're, I don't know. I'm gonna just, like, leave it at that to not spoil anything, but I really liked Girls with Sharp Sticks, and now I've heard that this one is not quite as good, but I still want to read it for myself and see, you know, what it's all about. I really liked the first one. They're, like, in particular, I think the bonds between the girls are just so great, and, like, it's just such awesome female friendships. So I think the last of, like, the more sci-fi books I will talk about is Crown Chasers by Rebecca Coppendaffer. So we follow Alyssa, who has been trying to outrun her family legacy. I guess her uncle is the emperor, and Alyssa doesn't really want to be next in line for the throne because she wants to be exploring. So I guess her uncle becomes ill, and instead of naming her as his successor, he calls for the crown chase, which is the first to happen in the 7th century. So representatives from each of the prime families are thrown into a race to find the royal seal, which has been hidden somewhere in the empire, and the first to find this wins the throne. So the chase ends up turning deadly, and there's more at stake than just the empire. So that sounds like so much fun. I love this idea of like racing across the empire to find this seal situation. Also, this is like a very vibrant cover, so that's fun. But it seems like such a fun premise and just like adventurous, and it feels like there's going to be some humor to it. So yeah, I definitely want to see how this goes. Now we get into some of the more like mystery thriller type books. And the first one I'll talk about is Hidden by Laura Griffin. So this is, I think, the first book in this Texas Murder Files series. So we have a woman who's brutally murdered on this hike and bike trail, and our investigative reporter turns up demanding access and answers. So she's trying to get information out of the lead detective, but this case is not like anything he's ever seen, and nothing adds up. So I think this is a romantic suspense, because it's like he knows that the last thing he needs is a romantic entanglement, but he can't convince himself to stay away from Bailey, this reporter. So she has a hunch that the victim wasn't who she claimed to be, and thinks that this mugging turned murder could have been a targeted hit. And this, I guess, leads her to a high-tech fortress on the outskirts of Austin, where researchers are pushing the boundaries of a cutting-edge technology that could be deadly. So that sounds like so much fun. I have not read anything by this author, but I do enjoy a good romantic suspense type book, and I've heard generally good reviews about this. The next book I'll talk about is 13 by Steve Kavanaugh. So this I mostly picked up, I had seen it, and then Kat from Brisbane Reviews had read it and really loved it, so I was like, okay, I should get this. So this is actually, I think, the third or fourth book in this series, but I think they're more standalone, so it should be okay. But basically it says murder trial of the century. Joshua Cain has killed to get the best seat in the house. He's done everything in his power to make sure the wrong man goes down for the crime, because this time the killer isn't on trial, he's on the jury. So this seems like a legal thriller, which I'm not sure I've really read much of before, but it sounds like such an interesting premise, and I definitely remember being very intrigued by this whole the killer is on the jury situation. And now that Kat has read it and has confirmed that it's worth reading, I definitely want to pick it up. The next book I'll talk about is The Lost Man by Jane Harper. So this is, I think, just a standalone thriller where we've got three brothers, one of whom has just died, and they're in the lonely Australian outback, and their homes are a 3-hour drive apart. So they were each other's nearest neighbor. The family is grieving this brother's death, but suspicion starts to take hold, because if someone forced him to his death, the isolation of the outback leaves few suspects. So I don't know, that's doesn't give me much to go off of, but I know that Amber from Books of Amber really enjoys Jane Harper's writing, and I had picked up The Dry recently, I think, from my library, because they were doing a library sale. So I found this as a buy one, get one half off sort of thing, and it seems like something I'm going to enjoy. The next book I'll talk about is All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. So this is interesting. So this is another, obviously, thriller where it's been 10 years since Nicolette has left this place, 10 years since she broke up with Tyler, the man she thought she'd marry, 10 years since her best friend disappeared. So I guess her father is ailing, and she ends up returning home to care for her dad. But then, within days, another girl goes missing, and she experiences deja vu. So she's trying to figure out what happened to the missing girl, and we learn more about, what happened 10 years ago. So what is interesting about this is I think the story is told backwards. And I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if it's a Memento type situation. I've read 2 other books, I think, by Megan Miranda, and I think they were in the 3.5 star range. So I do enjoy her writing. Some of them I think are better than others, but again, this whole backwards storytelling seems very interesting to me. The next book I'll talk about is Nunchuck Sleep by Ellie Marney. So this is a YA thriller, and basically this is kind of Mindhunter, I think. So we've got 2 teenagers, a serial killer survivor and a U.S. Marshal candidate, are recruited by the FBI to interview convicted juvenile killers and provide insight on cold cases. So I guess they become a friendship, or they form a friendship and are really good at their jobs, but they're called in to give advice on an active case who's a serial killer who exclusively hunts teenagers, so things start to go crazy. So they have to turn to one of the country's most notorious incarcerated murderers, who's a teenage sociopath. This person seems to be giving them the information they need, but he's an expert manipulator, and he has his sights set on this serial killer survivor. So that sounds just so much fun. I definitely enjoyed Mindhunter. I'm sad that I guess they're not continuing on in that series, or it's like the show is on like indefinite hiatus. I don't know. And the last thriller book I'll talk about is He Started It by Samantha Downing. So I really loved My Lovely Wife, so I wanted to pick this up, even though I've heard much more mixed reviews about this, specifically the ending, and I don't know what to do with that. But basically, we've got this like really shitty family, and the wealthy grandfather dies and leaves a cryptic final message, so the siblings and their respective partners have to come together for a cross-country road trip to fulfill his final wish and secure their inheritance. But I guess they're all trying to keep secrets and forget a memory, a missing person, an act of revenge, the man in the black truck who won't stop following your car, and at least one of you is a killer and there's a body in the trunk. So this seems like an extremely dysfunctional family, and I don't know, I'm very curious to see what happens here, but it seems like it kind of gives me like Knives Out vibes, where we've got this like, all the family members who are not the best trying to like secure this inheritance. I know I liked her writing from My Lovely Wife, and it was kind of like this twisted like book that I just could not stop reading, so I'm really hoping that this is going to be similar. So now we get into a couple of more horror books, and the first one I'll talk about is 12 Nights at Router House by J.W. Walker. So I think I heard about this from Rachel from The Shades of Orange, and this is basically our main character is a travel writer who specializes in creepy destinations, and so he's chosen to seal himself into a notorious abandoned haunted house for 2 weeks to see what happens. So his friend goes along with him, even though they haven't spoken in a year, and I guess this house was built by a one-armed carpenter and has sheltered as many deaths as it has rooms, and is packed with ghost stories, legends, and lore. Yet all the ghost stories are unimaginative, normal stories that every haunted house has. But I guess they don't find the typical tropes they know so well, and the horror and the mystery they find is different, strange. So I don't know. That sounds really awesome. I do enjoy like a haunted house story, and I seem to remember Rachel saying like she's not, I think, the biggest fan of haunted house stories, but this one worked really well, if I'm remembering that right. And I think it has sort of like this meta quality, which sounds really interesting. The next book I'll talk about is Fractured Tide by Leslie Lutz. So this came out like much earlier this year, and I've been really wanting to get it this entire time, so finally I got it as one of the buy two get one free sort of sales. But this is like water horror, I think. So our main character is a scuba diver, which is I think one of the big draws for me. Like I'm also a scuba diver, so I'm very intrigued by that. Our main character takes tourists out on these wreck dives, but a dive goes wrong. So the boat ends up at the bottom of the ocean, her customers are dead, so she ends up on a deserted island with no sign of rescue. But there's also this like unstoppable monster in the water and a sketchy jungle, and she ends up finding a handful of survivors, and she thinks that things are, improving, but she's not, but she's wrong. So the island is not what it seems somehow, and I guess her best way to find answers could be at the center of the island at the bottom of a flooded sinkhole. There's some sort of fractured reality. I don't know. That sounds really interesting to me. Obviously, like I like this premise of a sea monster type thing. I like that she's a scuba diver, and this seems just super trippy, and I really want to see what's going on here. And the last of the more horror type books is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. So I've read a couple of those books and really enjoyed them. So this one is more of like a haunted house type story. 25 years ago, our main character and her parents moved into this rambling Victorian estate. They spent 20 days there before fleeing into the dead of night, which I guess one of her father later recounted in a horror memoir. And this tale has become a worldwide phenomenon. So our main character has lived her life in the shadow of her father's book. So she ends up inheriting this house after her father's death, and she returns home to renovate it to prepare it for sale. But people from the past lurk in the shadows. The locals aren't thrilled about this. Their small town has become famous because of her father, and obviously we still have this house to contend with, and there's some strange occurrences, and she starts to wonder if the book is more fact than fiction. So Riley Sager's writing works really, really well for me. I think these have been very fast-paced, and there's been like some unexpected elements to them that I haven't really been able to guess. And again, like I mentioned with Router House, like I do enjoy a good haunted house story. So this seems like creepy and fun. Now we get to the romance books, and the first one I'll talk about is Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. So this is obviously a romance, and it's sort of like a fan fiction type thing. So we have Marcus, who plays Aeneas on television, and I guess he releases his frustrations with the show by writing and posting anonymous stories about the internet's favorite couple, Aeneas and Lavinia. And then we also have April, who is a hardcore Lavinia fan, and she's been, I guess, hiding her fanfic and cosplay hobbies from real life, but not anymore. So she puts her latest costume creation on Twitter, and this plus-size pic goes viral. So and Marcus ends up asking her out, and kind of realizes that she's his closest fandom friend, but obviously he's keeping the secret from her. So I've heard really good things about this, and then just like the whole fanfic thing, it seems really fun. And I think this was also one where I read like the first line and thought it was just like absolutely hilarious, and I was like, okay, I think that this writing is going to work well for me. The next one I'll talk about is In the Holidays by Christina Lawrence. So this is basically a Christmas romance that's kind of like Groundhog Day. So this is, I guess, the last Christmas. Our main character is going to be at her favorite place in the world, which is a snowy Utah cabin where her family has spent every Christmas since she was born, along with 2 other families. And I guess as she drives away from the cabin for the last time, she throws out a simple plea to the universe to please show me what will make me happy. So basically she ends up like waking up and she's on an airplane bound for Utah, and she just like keeps living this holiday over and over again and has to figure out how to break out of this loop and get her true love under the mistletoe. So Christina Lauren's books have been generally enjoyable for me. I've really loved the ones that I've read so far. And this seems just like such a fun Christmas romance. I like this Groundhog Day premise, like time loop type things tend to work well for me. So I'm very excited to see how this goes. And the last of the romances that I'll talk about is Simmer Down by Sarah Smith. I think this was in November's Unplugged book box. This is basically like a food truck romance, I guess. So, but they're in Maui, which is really awesome, and I'm super excited about that, actually. I love Maui, so I think that this will hopefully work well for me. I've read a book, Faker, I think, by Sarah Smith, and didn't love it as much as I hoped, but hopefully this one will be better. We've got feuding food trucks, and this British food truck owner has been stealing our main character's customers, and there's like this Maui food festival that will decide their fate to keep this spot. And you know, of course, it's a romance, so we can guess what's going to happen. So then we get into like the more comic graphic novel books, and the first one I'll talk about is The Mighty Thor. This is volume 2, Lords of Midgard. So this is basically like we have a female Thor. I think we've got some sort of corporate espionage. Some of the world's most powerful and evil conglomerates go to war with Thor caught in the middle. Our new Thor must contend with S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. I've really enjoyed this storyline so far. Definitely want to just keep going with this. The other one I will talk about here is Monstrous Book 1 by Marjorie Liu. So this is interesting. I don't entirely know what this is about, to be honest. We have our main character who lives in a world gripped by war, which is an alternate matriarchal 1900s Asia brimmed with arcane dangers. And so she's trying to overcome the trauma of violence and regain knowledge of her past, and she ends up being linked to an eldritch monster of tremendous power. I just like slurred my words there. eldritch monster words. I guess this link transforms them both and puts them in the crosshairs of deadly powers. So this collects, I think, the first 3 volumes. I don't know, I'm not entirely sure. Plus some like bonus stuff. So this was one I think that was like a Prime Day deal that was actually like quite good. And this is one that I've heard very positive things about in general, though I think it's like maybe a slightly confusing story. So I'm super intrigued by it. Like the artwork is lovely. And yeah, we shall see how this goes. Oh my god! Finally, this like beast of the book is the last one I'll talk about. And so this is The Art of Game of Thrones. So you probably don't remember this, but last year for Christmas, my parents got me costumes of Game of Thrones, and this was like, I think they came out with like 3 of those. There was like the costumes, the art, obviously, and then there was something else that I think wasn't quite as good. So I think that this is literally just like concept art, but it's just like a giant coffee table book. It's a lot of, I mean, just, yeah, literally just concept art. And I don't know, I mean, I am sad about how Game of Thrones ended, but as a whole, I did really enjoy the show, and I think, you know, I do like these sort of like behind-the-scenes type books, and I think concept art is always really interesting to look at. So this one had a very large coupon discount, and I've been like staring at this for a while now, and finally I was like, okay, that's the cheapest I've ever seen it, so I'm going to go ahead and get it. So yeah, I think this will be a fun book to peruse. Those are all the books that I have to show you. This is probably going to be, I think, the last book haul I'm filming this year because, you know, we've got Christmas coming up soon, and then my birthday's in January, so I'm trying to not buy books and, like, make my way through my TBR pile because I have a bit of a backup. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. I don't know what to ask for your question today, but I guess if you've made it this far, leave some sort of emoji in the comments, maybe like a robot or a dragon or just a smiley face, whatever you want to do. I have a Discord channel if you want to join that, and the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. That would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.